When you're building a workbench and you've got tracks on it, like this one, you're going to need to have space for your tools to exit, right? Well, you just need a little bit of space for your bolt to get through. That's it. So really, all I need is is about that much. But when I did this, instead of just leaving that much space, what I wanted to do was leave this much space. And what that does is it gives me the nice area to put screws when I'm working on face frames, cabinets. This is really nice to have that nice space right there. I mean, this seems like it's nothing, but really these little areas are a tremendous help. Also, when I'm taking things apart, let's say I'm doing like a restoration on a cabinet or, drawers or something, maybe I'm taking off staples or something. I can put them in these little areas also to keep tabs. This router hole serves a purpose for the router, but check this out. Sometimes I have glue bottles that are getting empty. Well, try to find a spot where you can drop this in. Well, check that out. If you put this in with the cap open, you're going to have a little problem. All that glue is going to get out of there. So just make sure that you close it and it's good. Just another little tip. Building cabinets for a living or for a hobby, having cabinet squares is really a nice thing to have. If you make your own, like these, it'll save you a lot of time and frustration putting cabinets together. You don't need to go out and spend all sorts of money and buy them. All you need to do is take some scrap material, plywood usually, and make your own. First, what you do is take a piece of maple, let's say plywood, and decide how long you want them. Now, how long you want them is going to determine how big of pieces you can use with them. If you're building cabinets that are small, maybe you want to build small ones. I have a collection of small ones and big ones, and I have these as well. So I have this shape, and then I have this shape. So if you're building them from scratch, what I would suggest is build them like this, because here's what you can do. All you need to do is take your block of wood, your plywood, and cut it at a 45-degree angle. What is that going to do? That's going to give you two pieces. Just remember, the idea is that these have to be perfectly square. So when you put it on your miter saw or your table saw, you cut these perfectly square, and then you cut this at a 45. You're going to end up with two pieces that have perfect square corners. Now you're going to notch this out. What I found is that 1.25 inches is the perfect thickness for putting together 3/4 inch cabinets. So if you factor in this thickness plus the 3/4 inch of your cabinet, and you use a 2-inch clamp, it fits perfectly. If you see that, and you'll just clamp it right there. So once you have this, secured on your cabinet, you can then go ahead and, do your nailing or your screwing, whatever it may be. The hole not only is to hold it on the wall, but it's actually to squeeze it in the corner. So as you're putting it, let's say this is the corner of the cabinet. When you're putting it in the cabinet, what I do is I actually take this hole and I squeeze it into the cabinet corner with my finger, pulling it tight. So now I'm getting it nice and tight into that corner. Without this guy there, it makes it a little more difficult. When you put this hole in, it's just real easy to do. These notches are tremendous when you're clamping. They're really nice. I'm not trying to get a clamp through a hole. Do yourself a favor, just make a notch. And then that way your clamps will go up like that versus trying to get a clamp through a hole. It's just going to be much better for you. You're going to be able to use whatever type of clamps you want to hold this. What else? Oh, another thing is when you come into a situation where you're trying to put this in an area that is just a little too small for these clamps or these squares, instead of scrapping them, what I do is I just cut the end off, and I could theoretically keep cutting it until I'm able to get these into a tight space. You see how I've rounded the corner there? I do that so that when you put them in the corner and there's glue squeeze out or whatnot, I like to just make sure that this isn't touching the inside of the corner. Like, you could either knock it off straight, or I just round it over with the sander real fast. I want to make sure that these don't fall in an earthquake. So instead of just letting them sit there, what I've done is I take a bungee cord, just like this. I put a hook on one end right there. I can now go under and feed this clamp up through the other side. Okay. These clamps cannot come out, right? They've got that thing keeping them there. So if you are concerned about earthquakes, I think this is a really good thing to do, and they're really stable with that. Now, why would you want flip stops instead of regular stops? Well, because if you use a regular stop, you can never get it out of the way. So if you have one that doesn't flip, let's say this guy right here. If I wanted to get this out of the way after setting my dimension, I couldn't, right? It's locked in there. So if I'm using this and I want to make a bunch of other sizes, I have to loosen this up each time. But let's say I'm making sizes at 20 inch, then I'm making it at 18 inches, and then I'm making it 16 inches. But maybe I want to go back to 20 inches and I don't want to lose that setting, which is a lot of times. This is why I recommend using flip stops. It speeds up the process because you can put multiple down here, whether it's these from Woodpecker or these from Rockler. These work really well for, for the money. I think these are absolutely, pretty tough to beat. So get some of these, flip out of the way. But here's the real kicker. I don't know why, sometimes I see people put their tracks in front of the saw fence, and I don't understand that. I just don't get it. And that, no matter what you do, that stop is always going to get in the way of your work. So if you put a stop down here, I can move it out of the way when I want to put a long piece down, right? So I can go right by it. But if that track is in front of the fence, right, it's going to bump right into it. So there's no way to move a stop if your track is in front. So if you're building a miter bench, do yourself a favor, put the track behind the fence a little bit, and that way when you flip your stop out of the way, you're completely out of the way. There's nothing that's going to get in the way. So time and time again, I don't know, I see these videos and I always wonder if people actually use what they're showing on YouTube or if they just do it for show. Okay, let me show you what I'm going to utilize. I'm going to utilize the fine adjust on this guy. That's really cool. So I'm going to trim off 1/16 of an inch. So right now it's set up for almost a flush cut right there. Now what I want to do is I want to adjust it, and it's a lot easier to do it this way and just use the fine adjust knob on the block. So check this out. Turn it towards me. And that's about 1/16 of an inch. I really like these stops. Okay, watch what happens when I spin this knob to tighten down my stop. Do you see that? So now if you looked at that and you're like, man, that's not going to work. It's just going to spin. So the track won't work with this stop. So either I have to change my bolt or I need to change my track, which is kind of a pain. So if you change your bolt, that would work fine. But sometimes we don't have access to different bolts. Maybe they're just not going to work. We don't have them. We can't order them. But watch what you can do. All you have to do is, instead of pushing down and tightening it up, it's just going to spin. Pull it up a little bit. And you see what happened? It stopped spinning, and there was enough friction on it that it it actually hugged the inside of the track and it actually tightened down. And now I can turn it as tight as I want and it doesn't spin. All right, I'm going to bead this face frame now. In woods that are prone to chipping out, when I make beads, what I like to do is make a scoring pass. So take that tooth and put it so it just barely cuts into the wood. When I'm done, you'll see that the depth I'm cutting, it's minimal. This is it right here. So that's basically when I'm talking about scoring it. So you can see how shallow a cut that is. But what it does is it just slices the wood fibers, and now I know this piece is not going to have chip out. So now with that done, I can do all the pieces and then I will make full depth. Okay, well, that's it right there. Perfect bead with absolutely crisp edge. Just takes a little bit of effort to do it this way, but you get absolutely perfect results. Even going through areas where the grain just changes direction all the time, right? Like that. Just gets nice and clean. Let's say you've got a big cabinet where there's 2 side cabinets and nothing in the middle except for the upper. That's very difficult to put in. What you want to do, if you can, is put what I call a hanger strip. As long as there's room above, of course, what I would do is take 1/4 inch material and utilize thinner material, obviously, versus 3/4 inch. Here, I don't have to worry about it because we have plenty of height above the cabinet, so it's not a problem. Make sure you're nice and tight to the cabinet and not loose anywhere. Let that glue set, and when it does, you'll be able to hang this guy up. You'll see when I install this. It's really nice. Okay, now push it back to the line. You see a line on the... Okay, so what I'm going to do, I need to scribe this. So I'm bringing this in a fixed amount, and that fixed amount is 3/4 inch. You could use whatever the dimension you'd like. You need to be able to move it over enough to be able to fit your piece in. So my piece is 3 inches, and so if I look at this number, I'm good. So what I'll do is I'll put my work piece right here, and it's going to shift over 3/4 inch. That's what I'm going to set my dividers at, 3/4 inch, and I'm going to scribe it down. So in order to hold it, I have to clamp it. So I'm going to put my clamp up on here, but what I want to do is make sure that I'm in the right level spot, and I want to put it right to that 3/4 inch mark. When it shifts over the dimension I cut it, it's going to fit right into the slot. Now, because I don't have a lot of meat back there, I got to do it very gently. Okay, so that's good right there. Check the bottom, make sure it's good. And I'm gonna take this, it's already set to 3/4 inch. What I want to do is just check that again, just make sure it's right at 3/4. So take it just like that. Now notice I have this clipped off, that little the little handle thing, the screw. I trim that because it gets in the way of the wall. Some people, when they scribe, they use track saws to cut the pieces. Now, maybe you've got the straightest walls on the planet. I've never encountered those, but I guess they probably exist somewhere, somehow. But in my case, walls very rarely do anything but, go like this. I'm just trying to illustrate why it's necessary to scribe and not just trim these guys to length. So as I go down, you can see that is anything but a straight line. So if you were to utilize a straight edge, it clearly wouldn't be a good result. To make this easier to work with, I'm going to actually remove part of this material right here. So I'm going to set up my table saw and I'm going to rabbet this out, this back edge out. You could use a router, but since I have my table saw, definitely that's an option. When you cut this type of a cut where we're doing basically what we're going to be doing is a rabbet, right? So we're going to be going like this and like this. So the first cut is going to be to make it like this. That's going to be our kerf right there. Second cut is going to be here. It'll cut that out. Then we're going to be left with this void. So all that's going to go bye-bye. There's a sequence to this. When you cut this, you want to make sure that you don't leave a piece in between your rip fence and the saw blade, if possible. So if you do it like this first, cut that, end up with that piece right there, right? That kerf. And then if you come on this one, the next one, where does your waist end up? Your waist ends up next to the fence, between the saw blade and the fence. With nothing between it to separate it, we can't use a splitter because we don't have, this isn't a through cut, so our splitter is removed. So what you're ending up with is a piece that's going to be trapped and you potentially could have some serious kickback. Instead, make this cut first, then make that cut. Where's your waist going to be? It's going to be on the outside of the blade. If I would have made the cut in the reverse order, this guy would have been pinned in there as I finished my cut. It would have been like that, right? So what's going to happen is as you do this, you come through the cut and you're going to lose the piece because it's going to be cut free now. And as you do this, look what's going to happen. This piece, if you're not ready for that, that guy is going to go shoo. Nothing's going to hold on to it. So unless you have a push stick, and the type of push stick I like to use in this situation is one that's got a heel on it. That heel needs to be long enough to go down and actually grab that piece of wood. So the blade will come through this wood, but I'm still supporting the piece as I push this through, right? All right, so now you can see my rabbet that I made is now going to be that much easier to shape. So I will be using my jigsaw on this guy, only because it's a little bit more material. Okay, now I've got a solution here. I've had these panels trying to flatten them out, and they just have a slight curvature to them. what that's going to do is it's going to make my doors warped. So I'm basically doing whatever I can do to straighten these guys out. So instead of putting weights on these guys, I have decided to go the next step, and that is to put pressure from floor to ceiling. I got all the pieces in, kind of made them flush, somewhat so that they're even. And it's just on here just a little bit so I can get all that space there. And as you can see, it is significantly pushed down and it's sagging. So that is really cool. In a little bit, I'll check it. My guess is it's not going to take that long, but I'm going to push a little bit harder on here. And again, that's really important to be up there on that joist. You definitely do not want to be going through the drywall on this thing.